So I just got out of class, and it was a biology class, and we started doing a little bit of chemistry. Because like for the first semester, I believe they said we're gonna be covering some molecular science, but it was extremely interesting to learn science now that now that I actually have a relationship with Jesus, because they were explaining like the scientific method and science in general, science in the Latin, I believe it's pronounced scientia, but it means knowledge. And the teacher, she's one of them new age folks, and she was talking about pseudoscience, which was science that can't be proven. She was saying like fluffy science, but of course her first example was, is there a God? But in her explaining what science was, she was saying that science can't be proven in she was really saying that science is just ongoing theories, and it has all these experiments and data that proves a certain thing to be true, but being that there's a possibility that it can change, they're all theories. And I was just thinking like, that's stupid and I was saying that in my mind, I was saying that it's stupid because why would you sit there and dedicate all this time, effort, money, and just to turn around and say none of this, all of this is still going to be a theory, because in the event that something new happens and we have to go back to the drawing board. And I was thinking about, this is the arrogance of man. And I was listening to Chuck Mesler like a while ago, and he was speaking about the illusion of knowledge, and how science has become a religion. And and my teacher, she's a professor, and she was just speaking about how scientists, they ask all these questions, but they end up always hitting a barrier. And I was like, okay, well, the barrier that all these scientists are hitting is God, because they don't want to have to admit that there's a God. And looking at it in plain view, science is just really, especially like when it comes to chemistry and biology and any other type of science, is really just the science or the learning of the systems that God set up. Because we were talking about, atoms today. So, table salt is sodium and chloride. So how sodium is set up, it has, you speak about the valence shell. The valence shell is the outermost shell of an atom. And I think it's called like the Bohr theory, where the first ring around the first ring can only have 2 electrons, and then any ring outside of that can have up to 8. So with sodium, it has the two electrons in its first ring, but its valence shell, which is the outermost shell, it only has 1 electron. So being that it has that valence shell but it only has 1 electron, it looks for another atom that has the remaining electrons to accommodate its valence shell. And chloride, its valence shell has 7 electrons. So really what I was getting at, that was just so interesting that I wanted to just share, is those 2 atoms, they are interactive, meaning that they're unstable, so they look for stability in other atoms. So that's where you get sodium and chloride making table salt, which is a compound atom. Basically 2 atoms come together. If I'm saying it wrong, correct me. But that's people. Estranged from God, we're unstable. And instead of going to God for stability, we go around, trying to find stability in other women and other men and jobs and whatever the case may be, and anything and everything. And there are atoms that are inert, meaning that they're already stable, and they don't interact with any other atoms at all. They don't interact. And she said that one thing that interests me is that she said with inert atoms, they can't get them to, like scientists, they basically they were trying to get them to interact with whatever that they were using in experiments, and they will not interact. So until they're destroyed. And that's folks. Like, when you're estranged from God and you do not choose to repent, you do not choose to turn away from sin, and you just keep going, you just keep pushing forward, doing what you want to do, you're an inert atom. You don't interact. You feel as though you're, you good, that you don't need God, and you'll be destroyed because you just choose to not interact with God at all. You choose to not repent. You choose to just believe that you're self-sufficient. You choose to believe that you are God, and you're going to be destroyed because you're an inert atom. And it makes sense for people who like science. But today when she was talking, I was just hearing the Bible. I'm just like, that's amazing how these systems that God set up, how they're so strategic, how they're so specific. But when a quote unquote scientist studies these systems that God made up, the fact that you can say that we can have all this evidence that proves something is valid, we're only going to call it a theory because of the potential that something else will come along to disprove us. So that's arrogance, the pride of man, to say, and that they just refuse to believe that there is a God that knows more than them. They've refused to even acknowledge that, okay, this here is true, but there's a living God that does what he wants to do. If he decides to create a new atom and is created, then that's something that we have to acknowledge. But instead of doing that, they just call everything a theory in the event that what they deem as true and proven is disproven really by God. So they just call everything a theory, which is a cop-out. But I just thought that was interesting. Science is very interesting. It's interesting. Science is literally just the study of the systems that God has made and created. And it's fun learning.